You're listening to the Soju Sessions, episode 28 on the SojuTalk Nation podcast feed. I'm your host, Crispy, also known as Crispy Wonton, or simply just Anton, and on today's episode, Malfiar, Mal, moderator on the SojuTalk K-pop podcast Discord, joins the show, and we go into a pretty in-depth discussion on his origins in K-pop, as well as the podcast and the early days of the Discord server. We even get into celebrating Girls Planet 999. All of this wrapped in the theme of connection, forming relationships and bonds with people, and what that means as far as humanizing the entertainers and idols that we all connect over. Coming up, my chat with Malfiar on the Soju Sessions. Joining Soju Sessions for another episode this week, moderator on the SojuTalk K-pop podcast Discord server, someone who is a big Loona fan and an IZ*ONE fan, and also one of the biggest voices in the Girls Planet 999 channel, keeping us updated, keeping us in the loop, and having a lot of really fun conversations over there. So please check us out. The one and only Malfiar, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
Of course. All right, so we've had you on the after show to talk specific music topics.
Yes,
it's really nice to get you to just talk, because I think you do a really nice job of understanding the details and then articulating them, and then really finding a way to thread the needle and put things together in a way where I can just sit back and let you go. And I love that personally, because I love hearing the way people put together stories and what it means to them. So really happy to have you here, Mel.
Thank you very much.
But we haven't had you on to talk about your origin story and how it all started. So take us through it. What was it like finding K-pop for the first time, and what was your experiences like over the years?
So K-pop was, for me, it was definitely a thing that I vaguely knew about and of it before I actually really dove deep. I knew of random songs from Big Bang and 21 that had made it to commercials in the US. I had known of those songs. I obviously knew Gangnam Style. And had heard of BTS mostly because a bunch of YouTubers are complaining that they could no longer use BTS to stand for behind the scenes. I remember when that was the big thing, YouTubers complaining about that. But it wasn't really until probably January, February of 2018 that I really started to jump in. Ironically, right when Korea was hosting the Winter Olympics. Which I feel just ended up helping out because I love watching the Olympics. And so it was around then. And what really launched it, without me knowing it was even K-pop at the time, was a bunch of the streamers that I was watching used Twice as Likey as one of their notification sounds when they would get subs or donations. And so I would be watching and I would just keep hearing the chorus over and over and over again. And eventually I just wondered what the heck is this song? Where is this from? And so I just decided to type into YouTube Likey song, and Twice as Likey came up. And that was the song. And at first I was this is kind of weird. I'm not sure I'm all about this. And then, a few days later, it was just stuck in my head. And I kept coming back and opening it and playing it. And then I realized, they had another song that had just come out, a month or two before with Heart Shaker. I started listening to that. And, slowly but surely, all of my free time was spent watching Twice content. And like at the time, like I wasn't very like happy with where I was in life, but like out of the blue, Twice just like showed up, and it was something that's like it made me smile, it made me happy. Um, and so it was just something that like I really looked forward to when I had time. And then like I was just also in like a major rut. Like I didn't have a job at the time, but like I really wanted to like buy albums. And so that weirdly enough, like that helped me get my life a bit more together. I like went out and actually like got a job, and it's been I guess you could say uphill, but depending on how you look at it, downhill from there too. Only like 100 and so albums later that I've purchased, but it's a big collection. But like that, oddly enough, like K-pop ended up pushing me to get my life together a bit.
That's a really great uplifting story. Just how K-pop is able to pull people out of certain spaces in life, especially in your case where you're on the internet and you're trying to find your way, and you're in this cross section of like video games and Twitch streaming, and all of a sudden you hear something that like piques your interest, and in a lot of ways it's still very much related to the same subculture, right? What are some of the connections you feel are very well, like on the surface, but also like pretty clear now that you've been in it for so long, between gaming culture, K-pop, anime, and the broader internet culture?
Um, it's common with just like it's a niche culture, and so a lot of those niche cultures, even though they can be very different, they still have that same sense of familiarity because you're just like it's a niche. You're like it's that small thing not everybody knows about where you're just like I must protect my precious thing. Um, so there's just like a lot of those similarities, even though we may be sitting here like geeking out about different things, like you still kind of geek out in the same way. Um, so there's just a lot of those little connections. As yeah, part of a lot of those different communities too.
Yeah, there's a participation element to it, right? Where we all kind of feel like we're in it together, even if our interests are a little bit different, whether it's between the different mediums and even the different groups in K-pop, right? You did mention a little bit about the dark place that you were at, the low points with how life was like turning out for you. Can you go in a little bit more detail of how like the positivity of K-pop helped pull you out of it?
It it gave me something to look forward to, and at the time, like I just felt like I didn't really have much to look forward to. Um, like I enjoyed waking up and just like going and watching whatever random videos. At the time, it was like purely Twice. Like Twice and BTS were the only two K-pop groups that like I knew even existed until someday I discovered like Taeyeon and Red Velvet, and then that started me going into everything else. But for a while, those were the only two that existed to me. Um, so it was just. Oh, one sec. My brother just walked in with my dog.
No, no worries,
Um,
no worries. And I can kind of speak to that too, where being a child of the internet, and myself, I have very similar circumstances of being unemployed at various points in my life. You just need a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
yes.
As far as like the psychological benefits of like finding community and finding a purpose, sometimes it's really just as small as looking forward to a song, a music video, a little bit of stimulation to help get you going, because it's at that bottom point where nothing is meaningful or nothing is pleasurable, where it gets very difficult for a lot of people. And I think it's really important that outside circumstances can push us into more positive directions. And also, it helps that being on the internet, you can connect with other people in so many ways that we're kind of unable to do in the past. I mentioned this to Koro, but I still remember the times of being on Reddit and forums before like this immediacy of like Discord, and
Yes.
waiting minutes waiting hours for like a response
See
on
if
like
somebody's put a comment about something. You're like,
yeah.
oh yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, finally, I feel like a connection to someone, and that leads really like nicely into like the Soju Talk community, right? How, um, it started off with the podcast, feeling connected with the crew and their conversation, but now with the Discord the way it is, I made this comparison many times, but it does feel like college. It just feels like school, where we're in and out of the spaces that we're most comfortable with, but we're all in this shared space and community. What was it like for you to find the podcast initially, and then how did you find the Discord?
Um, so it was actually my brother, my older brother, who had found Soju Talk first. I don't think he really ended up watching them or paying as much attention to them afterwards. For people who don't know, I kind of just like beat my family into submission with like K-pop, and now like my mom and brother both also watch and love K-pop as well. But it was just like brute force of me just like playing stuff all the freaking time that eventually I feel like they gave in. Um,
Shout out to your mom for being a consistent voter for Girls Planet 999.
I just had her watch the episode last night too.
That is
Um,
freaking brilliant. I love that.
but so my brother had found it, and it was the episode. It wasn't even one of the normal episodes. It was their special episode right after Produce 48 had ended. So it was like this. It had to have been like episode like around 8 or something, like super early on into when they were doing everything. Um, and so like I had saw that in like on his YouTube history the one time when I had to like go find like a different video, and I was like, what the heck is this? And so I ended up back on my computer clicking on it and like listening through it. And there was times where I was like, oh, that's a dumb opinion, or other times I was like, I agree with that. And then, like I realized that was like SojuTalk K-pop podcast. I was like, podcast? They have a podcast? And so I ended up like checking it out. And at the time, I was working overnights, stocking in a grocery store. And so like it'll just be like 9 hours a day that I'll just have where I'll more or less be by myself, and I could just have my headphones in and just do my thing. And so I'll just be listening to podcasts all of the time. And so I just ended up like checking them out and add it, and they ended up getting added to like my normal weekly rotation of podcasts to go through. Um, and that was all the way back at like episode 8, and still here today.
What was it about the crew's chemistry that pulled you in?
You could just, they were friends, and it showed like how they were. It's like they were all friends. Um, and this is just like it was something they were just doing for fun to hang out. It wasn't like corporatized. It was just like sitting at a table talking with a friend, or for me like talking with my mom and my brother, just chatting about stuff. At the time, they were still doing like more specific topics in their episodes. Like each episode had like its own topic before they shifted it into like the weekly format. I'm an old head like that. I remember I was there for those days. Um, but when they started shifting into like the weekly format, like focusing on the news each week and the new songs that week, like they were pretty much the only podcast that I found at the time that was doing that. And like there was like one or two others that I found, but I didn't like them. And so I liked their chemistry, how they were doing everything, and they were doing something that was unique and kept me occupied while I was working.
Yeah, it's a combination of the structure, but also feeling very included in what Doug, Warren, and Anita have to say, right? Or, like you said, it doesn't feel corporatized. It just feels like friends hanging out. But I think it's very well organized, and they definitely have refined their skills over time. What about the show that's changed over the years? Since you're an OG, like you were there from the beginning when they had like the talking bubbles. What were some of the elements that they improved on moving forward that you appreciated? That were some of the nicer changes.
Um, they take more time to research stuff. I definitely remember there are a lot of times, like super early on in episodes, where like Doug and Warren would say stuff, and like my instant reaction from being the geek of K-pop that I was, living on r/K-pop in my free time, was like just being like, "That's not right. That's wrong. That information's outdated." Like, so like that's, I think that contributes, stuff like that contributes to like whenever they introduce songs, like Doug has all this information now to like explain who the heck they are. When they go through and read stuff in like for like the industry news in that segment, like they really make sure to research up on stuff that they're talking about, so that way they don't just like talk out of their butt. Basically, like they are informed of what the heck is they're actually talking about. Um, no hate towards them at the time, but it was very opinionated early on. Um, and it's still opinionated now, but I feel like they have a lot more to ground those opinions in.
Yeah, there's a base level of being informed that the crew brings to the conversation, and I think that has perpetuated into a lot of the conversations that you see and we see on the server. I find myself wanting to at least like look up the Wikipedia pages of whatever it is I'm talking about, just so then I can refer. Okay, this is relatively accurate. I hope this is the most accurate thing. But if I do need to dig a little bit deeper and find the details, I feel like I'm more willing because of the show, and that's like been a big motivator there. So you mentioned you had feelings, you had thoughts about the way things were early on. It's obviously progressed and it's grown and it's evolved and changed. And you even said you're constantly, you're on r/K-pop a lot, but now we got the Discord. Um, Take me through the early.
Where I'm also on a lot.
Yes, take me through the early days of the Discord, and what was that like now having the immediacy of the space to not only interact with people, but to post news, to confirm certain pieces of K-pop information, or just to fan out about things and celebrate. I will call you out today that you were simping over Loona for like 20 minutes to an hour, so yes, you are very much on it, doing all kinds of things like that. But yeah, take me through the early days of the Discord.
Um, so I looked earlier, not too long before we started recording, and I was in like the first 5 people to join the server. There had only been like 4 or 5 messages even sent before I had joined. I joined before Anita. I was in the server before Anita was. Anita was the next member immediately after me to join the server. Um, so that's how early on in everything I was. I remember it was like the first episode where they had officially announced that they had made the Discord server. And at that point, like I was listening every week, so I knew like at 7 a.m. I think it was like on Wednesdays at the time that like they would have the new episode out. And so like right at 7 o'clock when I was working, I pulled up the episode and was listening to it like right away. And like the first few minutes they mentioned that like the Discord was out, and I joined it like straight away from there. Um I don't think I actually said anything in there for like a solid month or so. It was just like it was really quiet at the time. Like it was like sort of awkward. Nobody knew each other. Um, Everybody was in awe whenever like Doug or Warren said something. Um, it's like there wasn't like a community yet. Like we didn't really know what the heck we were. It was like really small, just like a handful of channels, just like a general channel and like 1 or 2 other things. There wasn't even like a voice chat yet. Um, so it was very different from the big organized Discord that we know and love today. Um, like if you look into our Discord, it's the K-pop chat was the original general channel. So if you go back to like the start of K-pop chat, that's where you'll find like all of the first members where it shows their messages for joining. Um, it's all the way back in there. Um, and like eventually from just like us talking enough, Doug decided to make like K-pop chat 1, 2, and 3. Um, And K-pop chat 2 is now Queens. K-pop chat 3 is now Kings. For the longest time, K-pop chat 2 was basically dubbed Loona chat, and we would yell at anybody if they came in there and talked about anything except for Loona. Um, there's a member there. They're still on the server, but we haven't seen them in like 2 years. Unfortunately, their name was Pengchu, and I credit that person very heavily for sending me down the Loona rabbit hole, because Pengchu was posting daily pictures of Loona in K-pop chat too, and just all over the place. It was literally like the daily pictures. I think Tugs joined like a few days after I did, and he was like posting daily Miyeon pictures at one point as well. Um, like slowly over time, like people started to chat a little bit more. I know my first like messages, it was when IZ*ONE was on tour in Japan, and Yujin showed up with like blue hair, and and everyone was like, did she actually dye her hair blue, or is this an edit? um and so that was like the first conversation that I really had, and then it just kind of went from there. I would have free time when I was just like at work between things, and I would just like be on Discord and just be chatting and talking. It was like the thing to keep me occupied when I had downtime and was bored. I would just go on Discord and just talk. And so I'd be talking all the time, and as time went on, more and more people started joining, more and more conversations started happening. So I'll just always be engaged on there talking about something. Um, it's progressed from there.
Yeah.
Like when the pandemic was like first hit, like I was on there all the time. I'm still on there all the time when I'm bored at work. I'm just sitting here like, please, somebody come talk to me, keep me occupied. Um, so that definitely contributes to me spending as much time as I do on Discord and just being involved in so many conversations.
Yeah. You said a lot of great things to really give people a nice sense of what the early days were like. Yeah, I think starting any Discord, obviously you have like the introduction phase of everyone getting to know each other. Again, very similar to the first days of school where nobody knows each other, or everyone's like relearning how to socialize, and then you have the teachers at a distance, which is kind of the crew, with Doug and Anita like popping in here and there. You don't really know how to approach them yet. But over time, you get comfortable with them. I guess if we keep on with the teacher analogy, you get to the point where you annoy the crap out of them, and then they somehow like are part of your lives in a way that you didn't expect. So yeah, I do appreciate Doug, Warren, and Anita, the three of them, being relatively active, especially for being the host, and then just all their duties with the server and the people. Yeah, shout out to Doug for constantly playing video games with you guys, because I think that's just a really cool thing to see every now and then. Yeah, I do want to touch real quick on the Loona rabbit hole. So, how did that start? Who was your first member? And how did those conversations go, going from twice BTS to now a lesser known group, and then finding this entire literal universe of things to learn about them?
So I I knew about Luna long before I ever actually checked them out, because at the time I thought orbits were annoying as hell. They were posting everywhere on everything, Stan Luna, like on everything you could find, every comment section you would go to, you would see it. And I was like, oh my god, these people are the most annoying fandom ever. Please go away. Like that was how I felt at the time, and I hated it. Um, but the first song that I ran into, it wasn't even intentional. I just had like stuff on autoplay, and it was Eve's New, her solo track, and that's still like one of my favorite K-pop songs in general. And it came on, I was like, what the heck is this? Who is this? I saw it was Loona. I was like, hold up a sec. Isn't this like the group whose fans I think are really annoying? And so I tried to stay away from it for a while, but I kept going back and listening to her song. I didn't listen to any of the others, but I listened to her song. And then on the Discord, Peng Shu would just be spamming us with like pictures of stuff with Loona. And then eventually I decided to like check out one of the other solo songs. And I was like, huh, this is pretty good. It's pretty good. And then then around this time I know like Hi Hi had already been out and I'd heard Hi Hi and it was like, oh, it's not that great. And I listened to it again and I was like, it's pretty good. And then like slowly over like within the span of like a week, I watched like every solo music video. I watched all the group videos. You know, Hi Hi and Butterfly had already been released at this point. I started watching the Loona TVs, the 1 minute episodes. Like I started watching those. Like, and so that's like then I just realized like, oh wait, crap, I'm in deep. I'm in deep already. I'm watching like behind the scenes content, and then I found like the Loona lore videos, but I think the name's like Twinfish. And I watched all of those. That's like an 8 hour thing to sit down and watch all of that.
That's dedication.
And
Yep.
at that point, I was like, I'm in deep. I'm in deep.
Yeah, man. No, you and honestly, we do appreciate that you were the one to accumulate all this knowledge because we can go to you anytime we have Luna questions. Yeah, if you haven't checked it out, Mal goes into really great detail about the Lunaverse and with respect to Paint the Town on a SojuTalk Nation episode. Really nice, concise, like bit of lore, which is actually really impressive considering how much they have to offer. I would also like to point out that you and I think we've mentioned this in the past, but just to reiterate, are very similar in that Eve is still my favorite. And I'm really glad to hear that that is the story, the origin of how it all began for you. Because I don't think I got the details of the Eve song, being the thing that
I tried to avoid it for the longest time, and then eventually I stopped.
Yeah, it's that inner conflict, right? It's like you don't want it, but you're curious, and then all of a sudden, like you're in it, and you're like, oh, well, I guess I'm here now. I guess it's taken over my entire life.
Yeah.
Which there's worse things to have your life being taken over. So that's I can definitely respect, and I don't know. It's always just a good feeling to hear people's stories of how they fall into something that does have a net positive, like K-pop, like the Lunaverse, and just the way that we connect with other people. Going and you said a lot about how the SojuTalk Discord has given you the avenue to connect with different groups and different spaces, and the fact that you are so active, and it's just been a big part of your life.
I think like every group that I've gotten into in the past like 2 years has been influenced by the Discord in some way, shape, or form.
Nice. Yeah, and that's a testament to the strength of community that I feel like Doug, Warren, and Anita have developed over time, and also just like a really nice space to be part of. So much part of that, you've become a moderator from when like the original 7. All right, yep. So I got a little bit of the story from Wolf, but I still don't exactly know the full picture of how it all happened. So what was that like when kind of the crew approached you, and you became a mod?
So like the people who they had messaged, like all of us were already like fairly active, and like we kept ourselves informed about stuff and like would correct people on things, or just generally like when people were acting up, like tell people to calm down. I specifically remember out of the blue one day, Doug made like a totally private channel in the Discord and like tagged me in it. And it was only him and I that were able to see anything in there. I forget what the name of it. It might have been like Malthiar's Salt Den or something like that. It was something really funny, and like he did a custom channel like that for every single person. And if I scroll back way back to like the start of the original mod chat, which is archived now, but if I scroll way back, there's a point where like all of us listed what our names were, and it was just so hilarious. Doug just had like the best sense of humor and really hit on like the right note for everybody for something like personalized to them. And then he like asked us if we would be willing to step up and help them out because they just Doug had been like doing every last thing on the Discord by himself at this point, and it was just starting to be overwhelming, and he wanted a hand and somebody to be able to help him out and to be able to bounce ideas off of. And so the seven of us agreed, and that's how at the time they dubbed it Mod 7 came to be. Um and so like like that group of people for the mods, like a lot of us have grown really close through just random conversations on in like the mod chats about all sorts of BS. That's where I started really talking to Wolf a lot more, to Nuna, Yokab. Like I didn't really talk to all of them as much, but then we all started talking a lot more, getting to know each other, um, helping Doug out with random things, whether it just be like helping with some moderation, keeping industry news in checks. That way you just didn't get like all sorts of random articles being posted in there, stuff that wasn't really news. That one was kind of like my baby for a little bit. Industry news, like that whole channel. Um, I took great pride in that for a while of making sure that it had the most up to date stuff and that it was all like from solid sources. People can still see a lot of times that I'll complain in reactions about like the source of something that people post. I'm like, that's not really that solid. I'm not sure we should be posting this just yet. Um, so that's where like that comes from. I really had taken charge with that. Um, we all kind of had like our own little thing that we focused in at the time, and so we just built up a little community within our group. Um, there are a lot of times I feel like we kind of forget that we're moderators on on the Discord. It's like, oh yeah, I have those like authorities and powers that I can do X thing. Because thankfully we've been able to build and cultivate a pretty nice, polite, and responsible community. Um, which is great compared to a lot of these other K-pop servers that I go into, and I'm like, oh, this is like a hot, wild west mess. I don't know if I want to be here. um, yeah, it started as the seven. We had somebody leave, and then we were fortunate to have Koala and Max join in with us a bit later, and that we just become our own like little friend group in there, and we've all gotten to know each other really well. Wolf is probably one of my best friends genuinely at this point, even though he's all the way over in Aruba. We've never met. He's one of the people I talk to like almost daily about all sorts of random stuff. Um, so yeah, we've been able to make a lot of good friendships through that.
That's really uplifting. Like at the end of the day, it's all about like connections and friendships, right? Um, I think a lot of the strength from the community stems from the relationships that we see between people. And it kind of starts with the crew and then trickles down into the mods, where it's clear that you guys talk to each other. It's clear that you guys know each other to varying degrees, right? It's clear that you have a direct line to each other, where in some servers, like you mentioned, it is a Wild West where people are kind of assigned different roles and then nobody ever talks to each other. Where it's here, we are able to kind of foster that sense of community because people are encouraged to, speak their mind, make mistakes, and then if those mistakes do occur, backtrack on them, have mods do their thing. And it's all this free flowing back and forth of how to kind of like build relationships ultimately. And I do think a lot of like what you said is kind of the uniqueness of the space that we're in. Yeah, and I don't know, man. It was just really nice to hear you like give a really like in-depth recap of how it all started and then where you are today with where you are socially with everyone, emotionally, intellectually. Especially with Wolf, considering on the surface, people may randomly see a message of you calling him a bitch, and people
All the time.
questioning, "What is this?" And all of a sudden, like, oh, but they kind of love each other, and it's kind of great.
I don't
So
even remember what started that, but it just became a thing, and we just still do it
it's
like a year and a half later.
it's a great bit because I think for a lot of people who don't know, it's very like jarring, like what is happening, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they know each other. You mentioned digging deep on the news and that like being your baby for a bit because you wanted to vet all the information, you wanted to dig deep. What sparked that for you as far as you taking deep dives and really taking ownership of information, whether that's making sure that the sources are correct or you yourself doing a lot of personal research on a number of topics and groups.
I think it was just like it came from boredom, funnily enough. Me just being at work or at home, bored, and just like I would be looking stuff up all the time. I would be on Twitter, just like refreshing to see if anything new popped up. Be refreshing on Reddit, seeing if anything new popped up, and this is like I just wanted to like know more. I wanted to know what was going on. And I wanted to make sure that like it was right. Not just like those random gossip articles that like it just says like sources say it. I'm like, okay, what's your source though? Anybody can say the source like from this info came from some source without naming it. Um, but I'm a person that likes to have all the information possible available to me. And so I feel like that just kind of ended up showing in how I did stuff in industry news for a while as well. There's a good chance if you ever posted anything in industry news and it got deleted, it was probably me. There's a really good chance about that. Or I messaged you and asked you to like move it to a different channel or something like that. Um, but yeah, it's just something that it's just how I am, and so that ended up stemming into that as well.
Yeah, I can appreciate that attention to detail, and you just wanting to get something right. Because, like you said, anyone could just put the phrase "sources say" or "this came from a very reliable source," and then just completely lie about whatever it is that they're saying. I think there's a
And
meme. No, go ahead.
we've had a lot of people like compliment us on like our industry news channel, like not even just like people like are active in our Discord, but even like people who host other K-pop podcasts have actually complimented us on like our industry news channel, and some of them are like in the server pretty much essentially to like open up our industry news channel because we've gotten like our community built up in such a way that like they know the right sort of things to put in there. And so even without me all spending as much time as I used to posting stuff in there, like there's still always like super up to date info being posted by a bunch of our community members. Um, and so like for anybody who just wants to be informed about it, it's a great place to go. Even my brother says he'll like look at the industry news channel just to see like what's going on in the world. Um, so it's been a cool thing that we've been able to like cultivate that.
Yeah, that's a great touch point for the community that we have that strong presence as far as having a great news source, a great aggregate of things that are on the internet, and then also vetting to making sure that it's accurate or it's in the direction of accurate because sometimes it is tricky, but then there's that conversation afterwards in reactions to kind of disseminate that information and figure it out. So I think both of those things are very healthy within SojuTalk. And yeah, all thanks to you guys. So props to you, Mal. I kind of wanted to flip a little bit into a different topic. Something that you also dig very deep
Boy,
into.
Is it
Uh,
time?
it is time. We are going to talk about Girls Planet 999, or Produce Season 4. I think is what Doug coined it.
Five, season
Five,
5.
season 5. Oh man! All right, I'm just gonna let you take it away. What appeals to you about competition shows, and in particular this one? Why are you so invested?
So I used to not really be a fan of like reality shows. Like in the US, like American Idol, The Voice, and stuff like that. I never really got into them. I don't really know what it was and what's super different. I have an idea of what's different, but like I don't really know what it was that made me just not really care about those. But then after I started getting into K-pop, like I saw these shows and suddenly it was just like be a needle being shoved into my arm, and I'm just like I need more of this. Um, it came out of nowhere. I didn't expect it. And it oddly enough it links back to Twice. Many things, as I was thinking earlier today, link back to Twice for me in some way, shape, or form. Um, because in Produce 101 they had Somi. And Somi had competed on 16, which is the show that Twice was made from. And so when I got into K-pop, IOI was already a thing. Um, but I was like watching anything and everything Twice related, and then like suddenly I saw that Somi had been on the show, and I was like, "Hey, Somi, I remember her from that thing that Twice did." And so like I ended up watching like all of Produce. I think IOI may have already been disbanded by the time I got into K-pop as well, or they were about to. I don't remember off the top of my head. Um, but like I consumed all of that, and I started watching a whole bunch of IOI stuff. Um, that that also links back to how I got so into Produce 48 because Chaeyoung, she had competed on 16. And so when they started announcing people for Produce 48, I was like, yo, wait, her. She was on 16. I remember her. And so like literally I started to watch Produce 48 completely because of Chaeyoung. Because I knew and remembered her, and then that was the first show that like I watched actively as it was happening. And so I was watching every single week. I was working night shifts still, so I got off work like just in time to come home, like take a shower, sit down at my computer, and be able to watch the episode live, um, without subtitles at the time. And then I have to wait a few days, and I'd watch it again with subtitles.
You're a beast for doing that, for watching it both times, raw and then with subtitles, because yeah, that is something else. Props to you for
Um,
doing that, by the way.
yeah. Um, but like I would just come home from work, and that's what I did. And just like I've always been a person with like the K-pop groups that I like. I care more about the people and them as like the person than I do more specifically about the music. And so like I would just start looking up information when the episodes were on about like who these people were, what was their history, what info was there available about them, what company were they from, were there any YouTube videos with them in it. And so I'd just start digging through, looking at like the people that I really liked, and that like would just lead me down the road. Like I'd follow all these other different people, and now like a bunch of the girl groups now that I like have some form of connection back to Produce 48, or Produce 101, like one of the Produce seasons. And just it stems from me having like taken the time and researched into these people, and now they're in a group years down the line, and it's like, hey, that's so and so. I remember them. Um, and so when Girls Planet 999 got announced, I was like, all right, it's time for this again. Let's go. Um, I know a year ago as well, Youth with You happened over in China, which it's basically a Produce clone. And a bunch of us on the server were watching it, and I got super invested into all that. Um, and so it's just like Every time a new comes around, I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's do this again.
Yeah, there is a relatable factor to how these competition shows, these reality shows, are very different than ones in the United States and Western markets, because just the nature of idols and the nature of how we're brought into their lives and their journey is just so different, right? We know so much about them, for better or for worse, but I do feel like it comes back to this idea of connection that seems to be a common thread throughout our conversation today.
Yes.
So there is a UCLA professor, and she specializes in media studies and Korean culture. She is from South Korea. Her textbook is K-pop Live, and she talks about this idea of liveness. And what are the elements of K-pop specific that are very different than any other entertainment form in the West? Liveness being this idea of being part of their life, following along with their journey, being connected over technology in a number of ways that are just very different, right? So everything from like the V lives that we're all used to seeing, the types of social media posts, and then all of this content that we're getting in addition to like their music, whether it's like Loona and the Loonaverse and their vlogs, or these reality shows and competition shows where yes, we get the main show itself, but then afterwards we get the fan cams, and then we get the like side content where they're doing like a mission on the side, or we just get like a practice video. I was literally watching Girls Planet 999 like right before this, the video with Snake with Suichi with the camera, and she's like pushing the camera in the face of all the members, and it's like talk to me. And it's ridiculous, right? Because it's just them like practicing and like being like really silly, but for some reason like you feel like you're in the camera and you're in the room with them. And I do feel like that plays into like how we get invested, and I feel like you and I share this because this
K-pop
show.
does
Go ahead.
K-pop does an amazing job of humanizing the people. And that's that like you build that people can call it a parasocial connection, but like it's you build that connection where it's like the people in K-pop that I like, I'm invested in them as people. Like I care about how like they are just like as a person, not just like, oh, when's the next song they're releasing? Oh, it's in a few months. Okay, I don't care about them until then. Like, no, I give a crap about them as a person, and I hope that like they're doing well and everything.
Yeah. And I do feel like it's important to recognize like the parasocial nature of it all. I do feel like recently it's been spun in a very like pointed way at like kind of the negatives of the parasocial experience, but I think
Yes.
there are it's a spectrum, right? Not everyone is going to experience the parasocial relationship the same way or have the desire to do kind of the more negatively portrayed aspects of it. Where for us, we get invested, we want to support them, but at a distance. I
I
very
know
Go ahead.
I know it's been said, I forget who, it might have been like Mini Max or somebody. They noticed that I said a lot of times when I would talk about people in groups that were my bias, that like I would say that they felt like somebody that I would want to be friends with. Is often what it seemed like I ended up saying about people that were my biases in groups. And so that was like one thing that I never noticed that I had said, like I said that before. And I said how often I said it until somebody actually pointed it out to me.
Yeah, but again, it's how well I know the person who's saying it, and for you and I, like I know that you mean it in a very like, endearing way, where it's like this is kind of the categorization of how you would like these people to be part of your life, right? Not in like the creepy like I'm going to stalk them and like do all this listing stuff. Funny enough, that was a news story on the main show this week. So
Yeah, it's crazy
it's just
stuff.
and see like that is the normal reaction to hearing that kind of news, right? Or it's like no, that's not it. Don't do that, please.
Mine's just like if I happen to have known this person in real life for whatever reason and they weren't a celebrity, I feel like I would be friends with them.
Yeah, and that I feel like is a better I guess a better way to look at it as opposed to like the extremes that parasocial phrase gets looped into oftentimes. But back to Girls Planet 999. There is a member of the show, sadly no
Oh,
longer on the show, that I would like to have you speak to just for a bit. We have Roada. She did make it to the next round, but she left for personal reasons. I think health reasons was what they mentioned on a few articles.
Yeah.
Mal, let's talk about it. So I know Rhoda a little bit. I've seen some of the things that she did in China, but give me a little bit of a background on her career and what you felt, how you felt she was represented on the show.
Um, so a lot of people are calling her Rhoda. That's what she was known as to the international audience when she was on Youth with You 2, which was a show, which was with a produce clone over in China that aired early last year. They started before COVID really took over and ended up filming the whole way through COVID, which is kind of crazy. Um, but she was a contestant on that show, so that's where I had first become familiar with her. She was one of like the strongest vocals on the show. And at first, she was somebody I remember I paid like almost no attention to because I was totally obsessed with like three other members. Um, but slowly over time, with them having like super long episodes for Youth with You and doing like 2 episodes a week as well, um, you had a lot of time to for them to show you content and get to know every single person that was on the show. And she made it the whole way to the finale, so she ended up having a lot of time where you were able to see and get familiar with her. Um, and so like through that, it was like she was just the super funny girl that they had there. A really good vocal. She ended up forming like some good friendships with other people that I really liked, which led to me liking her. Um, and so that's where like I had initially become familiar with her. I wasn't like even by like the end of the show, she was somebody that I liked, but wasn't somebody that I had hoped to make the final group in that show. Um, and then after Youth with You ended, I still continued to try to follow a lot of those people that I liked, but it's hard because Chinese media is very hard to find and get it when you're not in China. Um, and so when they started to announce like the names of people that were going over to Korea for Youth with You, or not Youth with You, for Girls Planet, I was like, yo, wait, hold up. I know that name. What do I know it from? Because all the Chinese girls left from like out of like the same like 2 flights out of like Beijing and Shanghai over to Korea. And so people just started seeing like all these like familiar recognized names all gathering and they were all on the same flight to Korea. And everyone was like, what's going on? Something's happening. Um and I saw her name and I was like, yo, wait. I remember her. I liked her. Um and so I was just kind of like where she ended up being my chosen one in the show. I was like, she's an amazing vocalist. Hopefully she gets a chance to show that. Unfortunately, she kind of didn't. She kind of did, but she kind of didn't. Um, but so like on Girls Planet, she in that first episode she was shown a lot for like reactions and stuff, and then after that she kind of became invisible. She was a group leader 2 separate times, but like that never got mentioned. Um, I always put the focus on other people. She never really tried for a main vocalist spot. Um, and so it was just kind of like by the end, when she ended up withdrawing, even though she was originally like my one pick, like I'd said it in the live chat when we were watching the episode, like I pretty much gave up. Because she wasn't standing out in the show for better or worse. Like she was there, she was still making it through. She made it through this last elimination. But she just like you didn't see her. And so at that point I was like I can't do this anymore. I can't handle this pain. So I just kind of like gave up. And then like 15 minutes later they show on the screen that she withdrew for medical reasons. So it's like that bittersweet like she's gone from the show, but she wasn't even eliminated. And so it's like, oh, okay, what do we do now? So like for a little while, I had that lost feeling. It's like who do I root for now? Like my person's gone, even though I'd given up on her like 15 minutes before she was actually gone.
Yeah, kind of
It
a
was
somber way
weird.
to like end her story, right? I I did take notice of a lot of her vocal talent throughout this show, in particular. And whenever you would post or anyone would post a video of her in China on YouTube, in the channel, I would watch it, and I'd be like, "This girl good. She can sing."
She's got a crazy history. Like she passed auditions for SM, JYP, I think Starship, and maybe Cube, but wasn't allowed to go because her family just basically said no. And like her family basically said to like told her that they wouldn't allow her to do anything until she graduated college. And so she ended up getting into like one of the best arts schools in China and graduated in like the top 10 of her class, and then went pushed to become an idol. Um she's got a really interesting story.
That's wild. I mean, it's that I really can't even put like words to that, because like the idea of first being allowed to audition and then making it through all of those auditions only to have like your family say no. It's like, well, then why did they let you audition to begin with? Unfortunately, no, it's like it's a very unfortunate situation. But she's very talented, and I hope that she is able to do what she wants to do in the future. Now that she's at least, you know, gotten rid of some of the barriers with finishing college and being like a top like academic, and obviously showing that she has talent and skill on this show. Yeah, Mel, thanks for like taking us down that road with Roda. Just because like I feel like these stories do get lost sometimes, if you're not like too caught up into like the backstory of everything. And the show didn't do anything to highlight any of the things that you mentioned. So I do appreciate that you're able to shine some light on it.
The closest thing they ever highlighted was way back in episode 1. She was in the debuted artist cell with Eugene and Momoka, and they
Yes.
that like very
Okay.
quickly disappeared.
Yeah. Okay. I do remember that now. With all the surprise cells. Okay.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I will look out for her, just because I am curious now of like what she does moving forward, because she is one of the older members of the show, and it does feel like this may be a jumping off point for a lot of the people who got eliminated or are no longer with the show. All right. Um, so we had episode 9 this past week. No performances, but we had a lot of interesting things. So let's run down it real quick, and then you take it wherever you want to go, sir. We had team reorganization. So we had Team Snake. I'll just mention the two members that were moved. So Youngun and Suyun were moved to You Plus Me Equals Love, and then we have Utopia. Shauna was moved to You Plus Me Equals Love. Team Shoot remained the same. That's Eugen's team with all the kids, and then Team U Plus Me
Daycare.
equals, yes, the daycare, and then Team U Plus Me Equals Love was the 4 members that had to add members to the team, and then after that we had the field trips. Team Snake went farming. Team Utopia went on a hike and paragliding. Team Shoot went to Diane's house. That was interesting, and they had sushi. And then U Plus Me Equals Love, massage, steak, and then Mashiro crying on the catwalk. All right. A lot of fun, a lot of wholesomeness. What did you love about this episode, if it wasn't everything?
It was everything. Like this whole episode is everything that I want in these sort of shows, of like them showing us them as people, not just like as like little robots in the practice room working on doing the song and figuring out conflict there. Like you got to see so much more of like pretty much every person, and just like them interacting with each other, talking and messing around. It like I was saying earlier, like it first off, I like when things humanize them. And so you got to see the friendships, you got to see them messing around and not being so serious. And that's what I want in these sort of things. That's what I've been missing this whole entire show, because they're doing these freaking tiny run times. There's no time for them to like show anything that's non-essential. Um, and so a lot of that's been cut out, and you don't get those little funny things popping up. Um, and I miss that because like in Produce 48, when I watched that, like it was so great when they did like the prank cams on people and like all this other little stuff. Because like you find it's like, oh, that person's really funny, or they react like really well to stuff. Um, you haven't really gotten to see those, like those relationships exist, but we don't get to see them on this show. And on this past week, we got to see those.
It does feel like the show's been accelerated, and a lot of the content's been condensed. Because so we do have 3 episodes remaining, I believe, and I think that's shorter than previous seasons. Is that correct?
It's the same, so it's the same amount of episodes, but like every episode is like an hour shorter than what Produce 48 was.
Got it. Okay, that's where I misremembered it. Yeah,
And
because
so like
I
that
was I was
we're
hearkening
at
for
episode
these.
9. That's like
Okay.
9 hours worth of content that we're missing out on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was hearkening for it to be longer. Like each episode, it's like I would watch 3 hours of this, and all of a sudden it's like it's
Yes.
done in an hour and a half. I'm like, okay, I guess we're done. Um, again, like to kind of thread this theme of people and connection. It's kind of nice that you bring in that for this episode because we did get a lot of moments of humanizing
It was
the members,
hilarious.
right? What were your favorite moments, whether it was the reorganization or the field trips?
Um so for people who don't know, my mom is like a big fan of the show. She watches the show like every single week, and she votes actively. She pesters me some days and asks me if I have voted yet. Um, so she watches every week. Unfortunately, I can't always have her watch like right away, so she may be a few days behind. But I commentate whenever she does watch on the Discord to her reactions to things because she tends to be very expressive. Um, and so last night I was watching through the show, and it made me realize like how funny a lot of the stuff that Team Snake when they're out on the farm, how just like hilarious a bunch of that is. Um, and we found it hilarious that like Team Snake got screwed over compared to in their activity compared to what everybody else did. But in the end, like theirs was probably the funniest because of them just like messing around and doing whatever. Um, and so like you just like the stuff like that. The U plus me equals love when they're like getting the massages and like the people are cracking and the other girls are like, "Oh my god, are you alive?" Like them like finding that stuff was like hilarious. Seeing those reactions from everybody. Um, it's just I wish we got more stuff like this.
Yeah, it's one of those. I feel like they made this episode specifically to give you all of it, and now we're just going to sprint to the finish line, which is a little unfortunate because, again,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, and I kind of agree. I like the moments where we get to know the members and we get to know the people that we're voting for. Um, to go back into Snake a little bit, I thought it was just like hilarious that one, they got to put on those farmer outfits. Two, they took like nothing seriously. And then three, when they did perform their song, the Ajumas and Ajishis just like, okay, cool. And then all of a sudden I did a trot song. It's like, okay, we get to see like some personality, some energy.
I said to my mom last night that it was like I imagined it as us being at like a party with a bunch of our family, and you just play some like new current pop song, and like all the people my mom's age are like, oh, okay. And then you after that you put on some like classic reggaeton song, and everybody's like out of their seats dancing. I was like, that's how I viewed that whole thing with the trot song.
Yeah, there's like a little relatable factor to it, right? Because everyone has a family that, has like the elder statesmen of their families, their aunts, uncles, grandmas, grandpas. They're just like, we're not about like the kid stuff. But if you give us some old school stuff, like then we'll get lit. And it was clearly the case here in the show. I did want to touch on a couple character building moments from Team Snake. I personally have a lot of favorites in this team. I am very well aware that not all of them will make it. Fine, nature of the show, cool. But I'm gonna throw this one at you because I feel like you'll have fun with this one. So we have two redemption stories. Fuyaning is a little bit like a nice slow progression where I think she's just very popular right now. She definitely showed a lot of charisma, a lot of team cohesion. But we have another redemption story, perhaps. Kai Bing, what are your opinions about her and this moment for her, kind of reflecting with her team?
It's too late. Like, it was a good moment, but her just like discussing having like difficulties with like leadership and stuff. But it's one of those where I just feel like, girl, the damage has already been done. It's too late. And we saw that later on, and like when they did the preliminary rankings for stuff, like it was she did the last round. Like people are not vibing with that, and it's showing. It's a shame, but it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
She had some funny moments during the episode, though.
Yeah, like a lot of nice redeeming moments. I think
like crying after like they had Diane's mom call her when Diane didn't even cry herself.
Yeah, that was something. Yeah, speaking of like Diane and like going to Diane's house. All right, so this is like tinfoil hat time. Do you feel like Mnet is just saying like this girl is going to debut?
Oh, I said that flat out when we were watching the episode live when they had said that it was Diane's mom. I was like, so Mnet has said Diane is gonna be in this final group.
Yeah, because that I'm kind of a loss for words because one, it was a very nice moment going to her house and like Yujin crying and all the children with her, but then I was like, yes, and also it's like her house and her mom, and now everyone's going to vote for her. So okay, cool.
It's not like in Produce, like Diane's mom, like family and company didn't pay Mnet. Mnet paid them.
Yeah, essentially, it's like
literally.
I don't even know what to say. It's like because I like her, but it's also just like if this was someone I didn't like, I would be just like beside myself. So I don't even know, but
it made for a lot of like great moments though. When they called Daeon and she's out freaking farming the sweet like to Chili's. I think it was Chili's at that point.
Yeah.
Like the shock on like her face as she's like, because at first they're like oh, okay, like one of the other teams is calling us. Like this is cool, I guess. And then she sees her mom.
Yeah.
Like
that was like genuine shock and just like, oh ma. It's just like, oh my god, you're so loud. I feel for you at this moment. Yeah.
And her reaction when they said that they went into her room.
Oh my god.
You could just tell she
Horrified.
was like, I hate my life.
I hate it here. Get me out. I'm over it. But yes, that will probably also lead to her not getting out and her sticking around. Oh man, a lot of fun in this episode, honestly.
One other thing that I noticed with Team Snake that I didn't catch the first time I watched the episode, but I noticed it last night. When You plus Me equals Love called Team Snake and they were at like their steak restaurant. Like when they called them, because it was like Daeon was the one that was on the phone. Like everyone's like, wait, what? You're eating steak? But like we're out here farming
with their box lunches.
But so then like. So Daeon like turned the camera for Ruchi to see it, and the look on Ruchi's face when she sees that they're eating, she's so done with everything. She's just so mad at that point, and I just thought it was hilarious. She's just looking, she just has that what the hell sort of look. I thought that was absolutely hilarious, and every time that you could see Ruchi in the background on the in that video call, you could just tell that she was like so over everything at that point after seeing what the other group was doing.
Yes, I did recall that and remember because I pay attention to a lot of Suruchi's things and her being on screen. So I saw that and I was like, ooh, she's feeling a kind of way.
She was tilted.
Yeah. Very genuine, to say the least. Yeah, God, that's. I don't even know like how to feel if I was them. Just like just having a good day on the farm, and all of a sudden you hear everyone else like, wait, everyone goes,
They got
what?
screwed. Everyone else is having these like nice good old times, and it's like, yo, Snake, you're gonna go farm. How about them sweet potatoes? How about
Yeah.
them chilies? Meanwhile, it's
Jeez.
like paragliding, like going to somebody's house and eating sushi, a freaking steak restaurant, like,
It's the nicest experiences, and then
and they go to the farm.
outdoors. Oh man. Well, hopefully it's a character building moment for them moving forward, and it did lead to a lot of great comedy for us.
Oh my god, they were just so funny.
Yeah. All right. To kind of wrap up our Girls Planet 999 episode 9 conversation, they did go over the preliminary rankings, the interim rankings. It's online, everyone. Go look it up. It's there. It will very much change next week. But I wanted to get your top 3, and who do you feel like are pretty assured to make the final group? Maybe not the entire 9, but maybe like your top 2 or 3 that you feel like are kind of a lock for the group.
My So when you say top three, do you mean like who am I voting for,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
yeah. So,
top three in general?
so your favorite top 3. So that could be either the ones that you're voting for, or just like the ones that you lean towards, and then the 2 or 3 that you feel like are kind of locks for the group as well.
So for voting for C group, ever since Zian has been gone, it's I've been voting Wunza. Um, those two were like really close friends. Also, just Wunza is like hilarious in like everything that she does. Um, and so I've been voting for her. My K group picks, it's now up in conflict because Mnet. I was picking Kanye So because like at this point I've like committed to like she's one of the like adorable maknaes and I need that in my life. Um, but then there's Bora, and now Mnet's like posted the thing last night being like, "Hey guys, Bora's at risk. Maybe you should nudge nudge vote for her." Um, and so like yesterday and today I voted for Bora. So I was like, Yesso's high enough. I need to vote for Bora, but I know that's going to be a thing where it's like that could cause Yesso to drop. I don't want that either. Um, and then in J group, I've been voting Nonaka Shana. She's been I dropped Mashiro for Shana.
Nice.
Um,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just taking a drink of water.
No, no, no,
Um,
no worries.
so, so
Yeah.
those are like the three I'm voting for. But if I had like a genuine top three, oh god, I know it would be like Wunza, Fu Yaning, and I'm not like that third spot could probably be contested by like so many people at this point. But it'll definitely like my top two are definitely Wunza and Fu Yaning, which makes me very stressed out because neither of those two are high enough at the moment to make the final group. But those two have both been like exponentially rising over the course of the show. So maybe there's a chance. I hope.
Yeah, I kind of feel like there's a lot of momentum going for 3 members of Snake, excluding Xiaoting and unfortunately Kaiping. Wenza, Fuyaning, and Surichi. I feel like 2 of those 3 are going to make it. Being personally, because I do feel like a lot of momentum going forward. Surichi's just definitely just been stable, but there's also a chance she could not make it. And for me, I have a lot of conflict because I like all 3 of them. I can't vote for all 3 of them. I
Oh
would
my
like
god,
all
that's
three
the
of them.
worst.
It's like, damn it, because I love the Fuyoning like quiet redemption story where it's just like she's just quietly a good teammate, she's just quietly a great performer, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's climbing up the ranks, boom. It's like everyone
I
forgot about like that first episode, which is a good
I
thing.
have liked Hu Yaning since she was another person that appeared on Youth with You too. And so I knew her from then, and when she was they had her for international fans as like Jessie Fu, which was dumb. Um, but like I knew her back then. She was even in like a group with Zian at one point. Um, so I've known her all the way since then and was familiar with her. Um, it's like I've been a fan of her from the start. I figured when they had like that huge blow up with like the initial teasers and trailers, I was like, that's staged. There's no way that they just like that just happened to happen. She was led into that. Even if she walked into the mousetrap, she was led to the mousetrap. Um, so like I've been a big fan. I had just kind of blew off a lot of those initial like the blow ups of everybody with her and Yujin. Especially now that like this week they had like a little stage show, like a drive-in stage show, and like you saw like her and Yujin like interacting there, like Yanning running over to hug Yujin. It's like there's not really bad blood there, like everybody's painting it out to be from those initial reactions.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it's a lot of the directors and the producers in the back saying like, "Hey, could you do this? Could you do this?" And then obviously editing in a way where it's like, "Oh, there's so much conflict." Or ultimately, these girls are spending like months together in dorms. Like they're probably friends. And with the stage show that you mentioned, it's clear. I mean, I saw a couple of clips. Man, it's nice to see them like just being really loose and not like be too serious about the choreography and just like have fun on stage. Oh, God, this is just messing me up. All right, Mal, we went long on Girls Planet 999, and I adore it because I adore this show, and I am a big fan of all the girls. Quickly, my top K is Diane. But even before like her quick rise, I was like, I think I want to like push for her because she's got that story of like she was K1 and then she dropped and then she had like a poor performance, but now she's like a fan favorite. So it's like, all right, well, what do I
She's had a
do?
crazy story.
Yeah, like,
I remember I didn't like her like early on in the show because she was just like complaining all the time
yeah,
about like is like, oh, I was K1 but now like I'm all the way back here. And at the time I was like, God, shut up. But now like they have edited her in a way to really push her to the forefront, and I feel like that has just really helped like redeem her to the general audience, because you don't hear anybody talk about how she was like at the start of the show, like almost every time they showed her for the first like 3 episodes she was complaining about something.
yeah.
um
It's crazy to think like how stories can evolve and change just with some editing and like producer pushing, right? Um, yeah, my J group. I think my J3 that I would like is Shauna, Mashiro, and Hikaru. Um, I feel like two out of those three are probably gonna make it, and I'd be happy with any two of those three. And then my C group, obviously a lot of conflict, but my number one is Surichi, and that is all. That is all I'm gonna say. All right, Mal, this is a great conversation. I love all the directions we went into. I love the detail that you give on life and things within K-pop and the server and Girls Planet 999. I'll just ask you our closing thoughts kind of question, just to put a bow on everything. With everything that's happened over the past 2 years with isolation, the internet being the place that we go to socialize and connect, which is the theme for today. What are you hopeful for moving forward as we get out of this interesting period in history?
um I'm looking forward to being able to just do stuff do stuff in person with and see people, go out and see shows, see concerts. Um, because that's one thing that I've really missed. I was lucky enough. God, was it only a week ago? God, no, it was 2 weeks ago now. 2 weeks ago, my older sister and we got tickets to go see a show in New York City on Broadway. Um, and like Broadway was closed for like a year and a half, and that's crazy. Like that, and like a lot of these live shows didn't happen for like a year and a half, 2 years now. That's just like crazy to think about. Um, and like when we got to the theater, like the moment that the first notes started of the song, like people in the audience around me were like started crying. Um, just because like this is something that they love and haven't been able to do, just of like going out to the theater, little things like that, in so long because of how the world is right now. Um, So it's like when what I had said way back in like the Loona episode of like you can't take everything for granted. It's the same exact thing. Like the stuff that we're used to being able to do and enjoying, like you never know when something crazy like this can come out of nowhere and just like totally upend everything. And so you have to enjoy it.
That's a beautiful sentiment. Yeah, very much like living in the present and appreciating the moment. Because yeah, things can change at any given time.
I'm
And
already going back to New York next week to go see another show with my sister.
and you're definitely living your life and getting out there and doing things as the world's opening up. And also, I appreciate that you, one, are very active on the server, and then two, are very active in real life. You know, being on the front line, doing those things. And I hope you are safe wherever you are, because we would love to continue to have you here and present. And one day, hopefully, getting everyone together for a Soju Talk meetup. I know they talked about it on the show a little bit today. Yesterday, they joked about it, but it would be great if we all could meet up.
It could happen. I might meet Warren next week. We'll see.
Nice.
I almost met him a few weeks ago when we were up there, but he was busy that night, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, let
But,
us know how that goes. We would love to hear and see pictures.
but yeah, it's hopefully, fingers crossed. Hopefully, he's not busy this time.
Yeah. Warren, a busy man he is.
How dare he?
All right. Well, Mal, thank you so much for everything. I don't even know where to begin, how to end. It's one of those really long, great conversations where I just learned so much, and I feel like people will enjoy all that you had to say and really get a different perspective on life and just how you approach things, and all the good that comes out with connecting with real people. So thank you, and I appreciate you coming on.
I love being here.
All right, let's sign out. Thank you for listening to the Soju Sessions on the Soju Talk Nation podcast feed. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Spotify or your preferred podcast platform, and continue the conversation on the Soju Talk Kpop podcast Discord. For Malfiar, I'm Crispy, and this has been the Soju Sessions.
Bye.